Thanks for joining us here as we react to what we've seen from the Premier League today and yesterday. Mark Ogden and Janusz Michallik joining me, Kay Murray, and we have just seen Chelsea held by Nottingham Forest. 1-1 that game finished. Last time out, Chelsea had beaten Bournemouth 2-0. And Janusz, I'm sure we were talking about the fact that there was a drop-off in that second half. So what went wrong for them today?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the first half, 80% possession, right? And, all over Nottingham Forest, who are surely still going down to the championship when it's all said and done. They had the chances, they looked the part, as they often do, but unfortunately for them, they could never find that second goal, and you could see immediately in the second half that Forest listen to what was said at halftime, because when that goal came in, and obviously it was a bad clearance there from Havertz, and Aurier found a way to equalize. It was coming. Gibbs White hit the crossbar. What a strike that was! But number of chances there with Brennan Johnson as well. So it wasn't by coincidence or by chance that Nottingham Forest equalized. It was coming.
Yeah, it definitely was coming. You got that feeling, didn't you, Mark, that obviously they'd gone ahead through Raheem Sterling in the first half. And then as soon as Forest came out in the second half, it could have been the tale of two different team talks in those dressing rooms, because they came out all guns blazing.
Yeah, and Chelsea didn't know what to do with it. And I think the problem with Chelsea is that, for me, and this isn't on Graham Potter, this is on the club itself, is that they brought all these players in the summer, and I can't think of any of the players they brought in that have actually made a difference, a positive difference. Lots of people like Cucurella today. I know Sterling scored a goal, but I don't think it was particularly impressive. Koulibaly worries me at times. I think the best players were Thiago Silva and Mason Mount, and they've been there through how many managers? Probably 3 or 4 now. So Chelsea look like a team that has just been thrown together with no real coherent plan. I think Potter's struggling to get the team to play how he wants. He's struggling for an idea into his best team. I think it showed in the second half. I think Forest had a lot more belief. They believed in the manager. The manager had a plan, and Forest just stuck to what they know best. And I think with Chelsea, I just worry about Chelsea. I said this the other day. I just think, this week they've got 2 games against Man City, one in the Premier League, one in the FA Cup. They'll probably lose both. So that'll be them out of the FA Cup and probably out of the race for the top 4. So these are difficult times for Chelsea. And I think Potter, I don't think he's under immediate pressure, but I know a lot of the fans are beginning to question his appointment. I think the owners have got a bit more patience, but we need to see more from Chelsea in games like this, that they actually are making progress. And they're playing against a team that's probably going to get relegated, as Janusz said. So Chelsea should not be struggling to get a result at Nottingham Forest with the players they have.
So does it just highlight the need for a striker, Janusz, with everything we saw today?
Yeah, because sometimes we get on here and we get on here every day just about, and sometimes it feels we're talking about the same thing. And I look at it, and it has to be as simple. Mark's right. I mean, the players that they've brought in did make a difference. But quite frankly, other than the injuries, which is important, because when we look at Arsenal and Manchester City top teams, I don't think they have as many problems. I don't even want to go on and say how many players Chelsea are missing, because that's important. I mean, you can't play well when you have 6 or 7 key players out of the lineup, especially at this time when you're playing every 2 days. But I mean, they don't have a striker. They just don't. I mean, Raheem Sterling, consider him as a prolific goal scorer, but he's nowhere near even where he was at Manchester City, even though he scored a goal, because I can't remember anything else he's done other than score that goal that kind of came to him out of nowhere. And Broja is injured. He's young. We don't really know if he can play at a level of Chelsea. But here we are hearing again about, Benoit Badiashile, who's a very good defender, is very young, and I think he can help. But, they're talking about him, they're talking about Enzo Fernandez, they're talking about midfielders and defenders. And yet, since now, Timo Werner has left, and there's nobody. And I'm saying nobody, because even Aubameyang had that header, remember, 80th minute or something like that, where he has to score that. So I think this is going to continue no matter what. I mean, this is Chelsea Football Club that don't have a half a striker. If you put all those players together, you still don't come out with one good, consistent goal scorer. You just don't.
Do you think, Mark, that they're going to give Potter the choice to at least go for who he wants to go for in this transfer window?
That's a good question, because I don't think they did that with Thomas Tuchel in the summer. I think there was a few players that came in that were questionable signs. I think he got Aubameyang. Obviously, that was his signing, and he was sacked about 3 or 4 days later. But I'm not quite sure that Graham Potter's going in there and say we need Enzo Fernandez. I mean, I'm sure he'd love him, but I just don't think he's a player that he would automatically put into his strategy. I think you're right. I think Chelsea need a striker, and all this talk about midfielders and defenders is great, but I just don't see the strategy. Sometimes you have to do what is staring you in the face. And what's staring Chelsea in the face is the fact that they haven't managed to put the ball in the back of the net. Aubameyang hasn't worked. Kai Havertz has got a goal in him, but he's not a 20-goal a season player. I just think they've made a massive mistake letting both Werner and Lukaku go in the summer. Now, I think they had to let Lukaku go. I think his head wasn't in the right place. They could have held on to Werner, not sold him back to Leipzig, but that was a decision they took. But they're paying the price now, and I think it just looks like Chelsea are a toothless team. But Potter has to find a way, and I just don't know what is. Pulisic and Havertz and Sterling and Mount. They're all the same player, really. They're all good in a certain area, but they're not strikers. And talking about midfielders is pointless. Chelsea aren't going to do anything this season without a guy who can put the ball in the back of the net.
We were just talking before we came on, Mark, about the fact that they're 8th at the moment in the table, are 7 points off Manchester United, who are 4th, and they've played the same amount of games as well. For you, Mark, what's your feeling on where they're going to end this season with the way things are going?
I think they're going to end outside the top 4. Like I said, if they lose against Man City on Thursday, I think it's Thursday at Stamford Bridge, then they could be 10 points behind United by that point. United play Bournemouth at home on Tuesday. So, if the double figures behind 4th place in early January, with a lot of inconsistency, a lot of question marks, without a goal scorer, I think they've got a problem. They're still in the Champions League. They've got Borussia Dortmund, so they may get through that, but I don't see Chelsea winning the Champions League. So already you're thinking, where's this season going to go? Where's it drifting off to? And it's not drifting to a good place. And I don't think the owners will admit they made a mistake sacking Thomas Tuchel, but I think everybody else in football thinks they made a mistake sacking Thomas Tuchel, because they had a guy that was a proven coach. The players respected him. What we on 3 or 4 games of the season when he was sacked, there wasn't enough game time played or anything. So he was sacked because he didn't really fit the vision of the owners, the long-term vision that was a young coach like Potter who would be more embracing of the idea of a kind of a collective strategy, a plan of going forward, young players coming through. I mean, it's like the old Mike Tyson quote, isn't it? Everyone's got a plan till they get a smack on the nose. And I think Chelsea's smack on the nose is if they miss out on the Champions League, because then all these question marks about this plan of going forward slowly with a plan. If the money's not coming in from the Champions League, then that plan goes out the window.
What do you think of what Mark's just said there, Janusz? Do you think that they might have some regrets of letting Tuchel go?
No, I think he was facing the same issues, didn't he? I think the biggest problem Thomas Tuchel had, in my opinion, was the success came a little bit too early for him. I know that sounds crazy, but if you want to stay long-term and build, I mean, he came in winning the Champions League right away, and then started to have those issues in terms of scoring. So I don't know. I mean, if they stayed patient and kept him, I think we're looking at the same issues right now. So I think, when you have a shock to the system like Chelsea did, and let's face it, I mean, you couldn't think this up, right? With what happened to Roman Abramovich and the war and all of that. When you're having those issues and a new manager come in, and not new manager, but new ownership comes in, I think it's normal when things don't go their way, when they want to maybe bring their own people. So I don't know if I go that far back. I just think that Chelsea are paying the price for the once in a lifetime shock to the system.
Do you want to respond to that, Mark?
Yeah, I take Janusz's point. I don't think the Chelsea owners will regret sacking Tuchel. It was their decision, but I think when I speak to Chelsea fans and people, on social media, it's pretty much universal. They didn't want Tuchel to go. They loved Thomas Tuchel because he did bring success. He won the Champions League, and Janusz is definitely right. It was too soon. It was not too soon, but it did come a lot earlier than people expected. But he's a guy that's got a proven track record, and I think when it comes to the crunch, the players believe in coaches that have actually won something and put a big trophy on the table, and they can think, well, this guy's having a rough patch. As Tuchel did at the start of the season, but they have the faith that he'll turn it around because he's a proven winner. He's done that at PSG, had a great record at Borussia Dortmund. So I think they'll regret sacking Tuchel privately, because Tuchel was a proven winner, a guy that knew what he was doing at this end of the table. I think Potter is a very talented coach, and he's got people at Brighton speak very highly of him, certainly at Swansea as well, and when he worked in Sweden. But this is Chelsea. This is 2-time Champions League winner, one of the biggest clubs in Europe. It really is no place for a novice.
All right, let's talk about another game that we saw today. It was a loss for Antonio Conte and Tottenham Hotspur. A loss they may not have expected against Aston Villa. 2-0 it finished. And let me say this, Janusz, it was not a buen dia for Hugo Lloris.
That's the 4th Argentine that has scored against him in the last, right? I mean, 3 goals in the final against Argentina and another one. So fair point to you on that one. Yeah, where do we start with Spurs? We have to start with Antonio Conte, because this is, I've always been a big fan, and Kay, you would know that, of Antonio Conte, what he has done in the past and the way he's managed in Serie A. But here's the problem: this is not Serie A. This is Premier League. This is Tottenham Hotspur. It's getting ugly. It's getting boring. It's getting ugly, and I think that's not what people want to watch. People will watch anything, especially at Spurs, who haven't won in ages, for as long as there are results behind it, and the results are not there. Finishing top 4 last season was big. Right now, that's slipping away from them. And again, 2 or 3 key players not in the lineup. Bit of an excuse, I suppose, because they're massive names. But I think the non-commitment from Antonio Conte with these results, I think, are going to put him on a hot seat if he's not on it already.
One thing he's definitely committed to doing is talking about the transfer window in these post-match interviews, Mark. Talking today, he said, to become the title contenders here, you need a solid foundation. You need 14 to 15 strong quality players. Then you need to add 2 for around 60 to 70 million to improve your team every single season. So you do need time. What are your thoughts on him saying something like this after today's game?
Well, he's stating the obvious, really, that all teams that are challenging for trophies and honours want to strengthen every summer, every window. And they all need a decent base of players. I think Tottenham have got a decent base of players, 14, 15 good players. They're not in the same bracket, I don't think, as City and Liverpool, because they haven't been winning Premier Leagues and Champions League. But Spurs have got a good squad, and I think it's a little bit disingenuous for Conte to say that Spurs need to make 60, 70 million pound signings, because I don't think they've ever done that in the history, apart from maybe under Belly, who wasn't a great success. So I think Tottenham aren't a club that do that. He's a coach that has got a track record of making teams better, so he has to really stick to that. But he's also a coach who likes to spend big money in every transfer window. We saw it in Inter Milan, and that is always the way how he falls out with clubs. At Chelsea, Inter, probably at Tottenham in the future, it will be the same thing. I think what Conte needs to do is find a way to stop Harry Kane. Harry Kane is like his biggest plus, but also his biggest problem, in the sense that, again, today he was starved of the ball and he was dropping deep trying to find the ball. And Kane, when he does that, he's got great vision, he can spray a great pass. But whenever Kane is in the midfield, there's nobody up front. So Conte needs to say to Kane, look, you stay up front, you stay near the goal, stay in the final third, so that when the ball is being put up front, you're there to take advantage of it. He doesn't need Harry Kane in midfield spraying passes to nobody in particular. But because Kane's getting frustrated by the lack of service, he's doing that. So Conte needs to find a way, whether it's in the transfer market or by rotating his players better or using his players better, so that Kane stays in the final third and isn't having to drop him in midfield, because you've got one of the best strikers in the world and he's dropping into midfield. That is not a good thing for any coach, certainly at Tottenham, to have.
Go ahead, Janusz.
Couple of things. Yes. He touched the ball the first time, in the 20th minute? That's
20th
crazy.
minute.
That's not on Conte. That's on players, right? If I had a Harry Kane, the first thing I would notice that I'm saying, my best players not even are on the ball, so I give him the ball, even if it's a 1-yard pass, just to get a touch and feel for the ball. So they need to do that. I don't know if they realized they hadn't had a touch, but I'd be shocked if they didn't. So they have to do it. But for me, I look at him first and foremost. Antonio Conte has to change, as I mentioned, because in today's football, people don't want to watch that. People just don't. There's no big club in the world right now that will want that, really, unless he goes back to Italy. And I can't even think of a team in Italy that right now has the money and likes the philosophy of Antonio Conte. So that's first. Second, I think he's got to stop blackmailing his club, because I feel that's what he does. That's his way of thinking, that he's going to get a response and he's going to get a player or two. He says he needs 13, 14 players for a foundation. There's a decent foundation that he's been putting. They've been giving him players, right? He's got a World Cup winner in the back. He's got, Son. He's got Kane. He's got a number of good players, and they need to respond to him a little bit better, because he showed more energy on the sideline, the way he does and runs around and all that, than his players on the pitch. So obviously his message is not getting there. And the third, I think, is that midfield, who I think we think it's better than it actually is. Bentancur is a big miss. And we look at somebody like Højbjerg, and I think of him as a good individual player. But when it comes to playing together with either Bentancur or Bissouma, there's not much in it. And we saw that today. terribly, terribly, even in a game like this, outplayed in our midfield, and not for the first time. And when you look at that midfield and you play 3-5-2 or whatever variation of that, you've got to have some creativity there. And I love Bentancur, and I don't even think of him as this great creative player. So unless you think that Skip's going to somehow change overnight, you tell me one player in the center of the pitch in that system that's going to release Kane and Son and the wide players, who, by the way, today is Doherty and Perisic, who at 33 is going to have games like today.
I think Janusz makes a really good point about Conte, and he used the word blackmail on the board. And I think, he has got that habit of forcing his board to make a decision. And I think at Inter, they got fed up with him, and he ended up running his own accord. And at Chelsea, it certainly happened as well. He's playing a dangerous game at Tottenham because there are a lot of good coaches available. Mauricio Pochettino is still available, and he would go back to Tottenham, and Tottenham fans as well coming back. Thomas Tuchel's available. Luis Enrique is available. And Tottenham have always shown that they're very happy to make a change in the manager department. They sacked Jose Mourinho the week for a League Cup final. So, if Conte needs to look around and think, hang on, I'm not the only kind of show in town here. There's some really good coaches that could take my job in the click of a finger. So maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he wants to be pushed out of the door, but if he doesn't, he needs to be careful, because there's some very good coaches that could take over at Tottenham and make them better very quickly.
Is he playing with fire, Janusz, then?
Yeah, I agree, Mark. Yeah, I think he is. And I think he is. And you know me. I mean, I've been behind Antonio Conte for a while now, but I just don't like what I see. Again, I bring the key players that are missing are important, because he's got a small squad, I would say, in terms of quality. So I think, if you look at somebody, just take somebody like Richarlison in a game today that was lacking energy. But, at the end of the day, it's excuses. And we're saying today that at the very least, I mean, I thought this was a team capable of winning some trophy. Finally, because I think they've done well under him last season. You'd think they have, the confidence of it. And somehow they were able to keep Harry Kane. Now imagine that. We haven't even talked about that, but he's got to be looking around. Well, I thought it was getting better, but it isn't. So I think that players will, behind the scenes, start thinking and maybe even talking to the board about a change, because they're going to be afraid that all that he's accomplished last season is going to fall apart. I agree with Mark. There's 2 or 3 managers out there that, if you start getting sick of Antonio Conte always complaining, maybe they pull a trigger.
Of course, it doesn't help that Arsenal are doing as well as they are. Another win for them yesterday, and now they are 7 points clear at the top of the table. But still, Manchester City are favourites. I'm going to come back to you on this, Janusz. Where are we standing on Arsenal as title contenders right now?
I told you that they are contenders. They are contenders now. I finally, I think I've gotten to that a couple of weeks ago. But they can win it. We can't sit here and look at this situation.
Are they favourites?
We're not even halfway through the season. That's why I'm still, it's not me sitting on the fence. What I will tell you is that I will no longer look for excuses not to say that it's not possible for them to win it. It's quite possible, because we can't sit here and watch what Arsenal are doing week in and week out. This is a young team. It's got some leaders in it, and they have elite players on that team. The elite players are performing. We always wonder what may happen when Gabriel Jesus is not available. Well, we see it. The elite players, the young elite players, because I mean, it's scary to think what Saka and Gabriel Martinelli may do in years to come if they continue to develop at this level, because they are elite. Odegaard is an elite player. We saw yesterday how incredibly good Thomas Partey can be. We've seen Xhaka, who finally, without the pressure of being the main man and a captain in the past, how well he plays, because he just plays his role. Too much was asked of Granit Xhaka in the past, and I think we always knew that he's a good player. So, look, I think they are right now favorites, if you want me to say it. The only thing is that I think we tend to forget that it's not even halfway through the season, and Arsenal hasn't played Manchester City yet.
No, they haven't, but maybe they could lose to them twice and still win the way things are going. But will they win it? Arsenal, for you, Mark?
They can win it, but they're not the favourites, and I do think that we need to see them react after a setback. We haven't seen that, and that's because they've been playing so well. I mean, I think the only league game they've lost was at Old Trafford, so there's no shame in that, and they were very good that day. But the pressure on Arsenal comes when they do drop a point or drop a 3 points maybe, and then how do they react? Because that they're a young team, and we saw at the end of last season when it looked like they were nailed on to qualify for the Champions League, and they blew up in the final 2 or 3 weeks of the season, lost at Tottenham, and that was it. It was just the heads went. So I think they're in a much better place now. They're a much better team of players, but it's still very much the same squad. So let's just see what they're like if they do have a setback. You know, they might not. I think we're getting to the point now where, a bit like Leicester when they won it in 2016, everyone kept saying they're going to blow up, and they didn't do it. I think once you get to February, if Arsenal start top at February, that's when you start seeing the finishing line, and then all the questions get erased. But I do think we have to see what they're like after a setback, and they haven't played City yet, as Janusz says. And I think, you know, City are the best team, they're the best squad, and you just know that City from today or from tomorrow could win 19, 20 games on the bounce. They've done it before. They got Erling Haaland scoring goals every game. They've got people like Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne that can always supplement that. So City are so strong that Arsenal at some point will start to look over the shoulder and start worrying about what City can do. And that is it's a psychological thing for me that is the test for Arsenal. But, you know, they've held off so far, but it is early and it's not the halfway stage yet, as Janusz says.
Go ahead, Janusz.
Oh no, it's good. It's good. I don't know if I have much to add other than I think the key point is what Mark made, that you have to look at the squad, and that squad is unbelievable at Manchester City, and that squad does not exist at Arsenal. And I think when that time comes, when you do get another injury or two, or maybe a setback, I think you always feel that you can change the lineup in every which way, and maybe change the way the game's played. Although, again, I mean, here's Manchester City dropping a point, dropping a point. So
that's quite great. They were helped by Everton yesterday.
It's not insignificant. 7 points is a lot, even at this stage. And that's why, not that I've warmed up, but I recognize that with this advantage, Arsenal can run and win the league.
So what went wrong for City yesterday then, Mark?
Good question. Everton have had a really bad run of form, and you would never have said that they were going to drop points in that game. But, Demarai Gray's goal was a fantastic goal, but they still had time to respond after that. So I was surprised. I mean, I saw them at Leeds in midweek last week, and they could have scored 10 by half time. So City creating so many chances that it was just a shot to the system, that result against Everton yesterday. Everton do have that ability in them to get the odd result here and there, but I don't know. I can't explain it, because you look at the team that City had out, you look at Everton's recent form. There was no way really that they could get any result out of that game, but they did. So it just shows you. I think Arsenal need to take note that on any given day, any team in the Premier League can dredge a performance from nowhere and come up with a shock. We've seen Liverpool have lost some surprising games this season, and I think Liverpool are a better team than Arsenal. So we'll see. I wouldn't take it for granted that Arsenal will coast the title. I think there are some pitfalls down the line. I think the Everton result at City yesterday just shows them that you've got to be very careful. Arsenal's next game is Newcastle at home. That is a really tough game, especially with Newcastle not winning against Leeds at the weekend. That we have to see how they react now. How can Newcastle react from a setback? So now it starts for Arsenal. They've got a tough run of games. They've got Newcastle at home. They've got Man United coming up. They've got Tottenham away. Tottenham aren't great, but it's a North London derby. They've got City coming up soon. So, yeah, the next 4 to 5 weeks will tell us all about Arsenal, what they can do.
Yeah.
All right. Go on, Janusz.
No, just quickly on City, because Pep has this ability to test the players when they're at their best sometimes, right? We often wonder. We've seen it with Gabriel Jesus. We've seen it with Bernardo Silva. I think I'm looking at this team, and I see him desperately trying to justify the 100 million plus for Jack Grealish, and I don't see it. This is not a 100 million player. We saw the previous game where statistics lie, don't they? I mean, he was horrible. Who they played before this game? He was terrible in the first half, and a couple assists to Haaland. I can't remember so many games. Yesterday he was okay, nothing special. You cannot possibly tell me that he should be starting ahead of Phil Foden unless there's something that we don't know about, because Phil Foden is by far the better player, and just in general. When we talk about Haaland and we talk about the goals, 20 or 21 goals, I mean, imagine ahead of the season if somebody told you that Haaland's coming in and is going to score 21 goals in 16, 17 games. You'd think that City would win the title by now already, right? They'd be out of sight. So I don't know. I don't want to look too much into it, but I wonder if that creates a little bit of an imbalance. The way he scores, 4, 5, 6 touches or 10 touches, and he gets a goal, and it all look great. But I wonder if this is imbalancing a team just a little bit. It's great to talk about it. You take the goals. We talk about De Bruyne almost exclusively looking at Erling Haaland all the time. Whereas I think of Manchester City at their best, where everybody contributed everywhere. And I just don't see that. Now, there's still enough in there to win the league. But for sure, this is a different Manchester City. And it's okay. But with 21 goals in the Premier League at this stage, we shouldn't be talking about Arsenal or anybody else for that matter.
Well, one thing we were all talking about yesterday, Mark, was Erik ten Hag dropping Marcus Rashford for disciplinary reasons. Before we get to the game, once again, we've seen the Manchester United coach put his foot down. Were you surprised to see it was Marcus Rashford, though?
Yeah, I was. But then when we found out what it was almost quite comical in a way that he overslept. And I think it's a credit to Ten Hag, because during the summer tour of Australia, Alejandro Garnacho, the young player, was again upsetting Ten Hag with his timekeeping. So Ten Hag dropped him and didn't give him any games. So the view at United is that he can't apply that rule to a young kid and not apply it to a senior player like Rashford. So with Ten Hag, the rules are the rules. You know, if you miss a meeting, if you're late, you get dropped, you get punished. And, you know, we saw him take on Cristiano Ronaldo on several occasions this year, which a lot, you know, maybe last season, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Ralph Rangnick were frightened to death of Ronaldo. So I think Ten Hag has laid down the law. And, you know, it's a long time since Sir Alex Ferguson left United now. It's 10 years since Fergie left. But for me, Ten Hag is showing the exact kind of discipline and rule that Ferguson had so much success with. You know, there's only one boss, and that's the manager. And Ferguson would do this. He would drop players. He'd drop David Beckham. He'd drop Wayne Rooney, all these big players that you'd think, wow, you know what? I remember being at games when Fergie dropped people like Rooney and Beckham thinking, I can't believe he's done that for a big game. He dropped Rooney against Real Madrid once, and obviously they lost that game. But that showed you that discipline and control come over everything for a manager. And, you know, Ten Hag had that idea with Rashford, and he put him on at half-time. He showed there was no grudges, and Rashford won the game. And I think fair play to Rashford as well. After the game, he was asked about it, and he said, look, totally behind the manager. Being late for a meeting, it's non-negotiable. He was right. I've scored a goal. Let's move on. So there's no hangover. There's no residue. And I just think it showed that Ten Hag has really got a grip of Man United. And for the first time in 10 years, they look like a team that's going places and with somebody in charge. And that's great to see. You know, who knows where they can go from here.
And you're absolutely right. This is a masterclass. They should teach that in coaching schools. What Ten Hag is doing, because I mean, you know, I mean, the same players as with Ragnick and even Ola. I mean, not same couple of additions, but you know, it goes to show what leadership can do. You know, that masterclass, because with Ronaldo, I mean, he got rid of him, always wanted to, without looking like a bad guy. And that's not easy with a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? For any manager, especially somebody like Ten Hag. It's not like he's all that experienced. So that's one. The Rashford situation, think about it. I mean, if I was in that dressing room, and it happened before, I mean, it's just trivial. What he did with him, he didn't have to do that. He could have forgotten about it. No player would have said, I can't believe Rashford's playing because he overslept. It happened. This wasn't a bad thing that happened to Rashford where he had no choice. He had a choice of playing him. So all that is trivial. But by doing so, he got a response. He comes in the second half. He scores a goal. And now Ten Hag in that dressing room solidifies his leadership. So to me, it's absolutely incredible. I'd worry if I was everybody else in the Premier League about Manchester United going forward already this season in the future, because it almost seems to me like that leadership, he came in and changed Manchester United overnight. He really has. All the struggles of the past 10 years, if this continues, it's forgotten because he's got the player. He may get finally the new ownership, which is going to be another bonus. And here we are, Manchester United, back where they were once before, you know, a long time ago under Sir Alex Ferguson, as you said, Mark.
There is another game to look forward to. It's Brentford against Liverpool. That game is coming up tomorrow. Liverpool have been on a winning run since returning from the World Cup with 2 wins in the last game. Brentford are unbeaten. And remember, before the World Cup, they beat Manchester City as well. Janusz, I'm going to come back to you. Do you have any cause for concern with Liverpool in those first 2 games that we've seen from them?
Oh, plenty. Yeah, plenty. Unfortunately, yes. Again, lots of injuries. I know I repeat myself, but there are 2 or 3 clubs in the league that have a ton, and Liverpool are one of them. And especially key players. So midfield, I think everybody's tired of it, but I hope it changes because that midfield is, in my opinion, dysfunctional to the way that Liverpool wants to play and Jurgen Klopp, because that midfield has to be very good, not just in protection, but in terms of mobility because Liverpool plays with a high line. And then defensively, something that was very, very good when Liverpool were at their best, they continue to struggle. I mean, Van Dijk, we've seen it. I mean, gets pulled out of position. The goal that Leicester City scored, I think, was Dewsbury. Hall, I mean, my goodness, he walked in through the midfield. I think Jordan Henderson, if I remember, overcommitted. I'm not sure where Van Dijk was, but he was pulled out of the center of the defense as well. So there are issues there. Now, Andy Robertson is injured. I don't know the latest status on him, so I don't know if he's going to be available or not. So those are issues because with everybody that they're missing in terms of going forward, and those are significant players and significant names, scoring goals for Liverpool is not an issue. And it won't be an issue. And we can sit here and say, well, Darwin Núñez is not taking advantage of his chances and all that. That's okay. We've said it. For as long as Mo Salah scores, Liverpool has always scored by committee, and they're going to continue doing that. And now Corey Gakpo is going to come in. He's going to get his 1 or 2 or 3 goals. That's not going to be an issue. The midfield continues to be one, and defense is as well. So, look, Brentford, lost at home only once, I think, to Arsenal. They're very good, and then they actually just proved that they can win away from home this past weekend as well. So a physical team, and if Ivan Toney is available, that's a worry. If he isn't, I think that changes Brentford significantly.
What are you looking for in this clash, Mark?
Well, I just think Liverpool can be absolutely anything this season. They could mount a run of wins that could get them back in the title race, or they could just fall away because, like Janusz says, they've got midfield issues, and Van Dijk, Van Dijk, for me, has become a very more passive defender in the last 18 months. Whether it's, since his cruciate ligament injury, whether he's lost a little bit of pace, but he reads the game well. But I do think that at times he allows a forward to make a decision for him. And I think a lot of opponents have worked that out. And I think they're taking Van Dijk on whereas they wouldn't do in the past. And I think he has looked a little bit shaky recently. But still, he's a great defender on his day. But they've got a great goalkeeper as well. So I just don't know what to do with Liverpool, whether to say they're going to get back in the title race or they're going to fall away and miss out on the top 4. Because right now, they're not in the top 4 just yet. I think it could boil down to a race between them and Man United for the 4th spot. But they could still make a run of games and get back in the title race. So there's a lot of inconsistency there. But in terms of goals, they will score goals all the time. And unlike Man City, where it's all through one player at the moment with Erling Haaland, Liverpool just, Mo Salah scores goals. Núñez will score some goals. Gakpo will score, like Janusz says. I think Firmino's got to come back. They've got goals everywhere, but they're just so unpredictable. And it's really hard to call how they're going to finish this season.
Yeah, still so much to look forward to when it does come to the Premier League this season. Janusz and I will be back actually tomorrow morning. We'll be bringing you PL Express, and the crew will be back tomorrow after that game between Brentford and Liverpool right here on YouTube. So make sure you are with them. For now, though, we'll say goodbye and thanks for being with us.